You're listening to Midlife Side Quest, the Over the Hill Gaming Podcast. Here's your host, John Wall.
It's October 17th, 2024, and welcome back to another episode of Midlife Side Quest, the Over the Hill video game podcast. My name is John Wall, and every Thursday morning I bring you video game impressions, the latest industry news, and tales of a Gen X geek delivered to you in 15 minutes or less, or your next podcast is free. To make sure you never miss an episode, you can subscribe to the show on all major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And I would be grateful if you left a review while you're there. Thank you so much for tuning in today, because on this episode, I'm going to be talking about all of the highlights from my recent trip to Japan. But first, checking out the headlines, it looks like there's some leadership shifting over at Xbox. Former Turn 10 studio head and current head of Xbox Game Studios, Alan Hartman, is retiring after being with Microsoft for 30 years, and Rare's Craig Duncan will be taking his place to oversee the teams at the Coalition, Halo Studios, Ninja Theory, and others. I think Xbox Game Studios has seen improvement in the last 2 years or so with, getting their games out on a more consistent schedule, but there's still more work to be done. Duncan has been the head of Rare for about 14 years, and in that time, I think it's safe to say that they've had mixed results. They managed to turn around Sea of Thieves after a disappointing launch and turn it into one of Xbox's better successes, but they've struggled to get Everwild out the door or even, show significant updates on the game. So hopefully Duncan can help to get some of these long gestating titles like State of Decay 3 and Perfect Dark across the finish line finally. So this past weekend, I got back after spending nearly 2 weeks vacationing in Japan. It was Christina and I, plus the kids, and Christina's sister. We spent most of our time in Tokyo and Kyoto, but we also made day trips to Osaka, Hakone, and Yokohama. I don't consider myself to be particularly well-traveled. I've been to some really cool places, but over the past dozen or so years, when our kids were younger, we didn't really have that expendable income for big trips. So this has been really exciting to plan over the last year or so. And now that I can look back on it, I think it's not only the most amazing trip I think I've ever taken, but it was the kind of experience that actually gave me a new perspective on life, actually. First things first, though, this is a video game podcast, so I'm not going to bury the lead. For most video game fans, Japan is kind of the mecca. Not like mecha, like giant robots, although there were lots of giant robots. I mean in that it's like the center of the video game universe. And while I certainly didn't get around to doing everything I would have liked to do, I did a lot, and it did not disappoint in that department. First, there's the shopping. I hit up the Capcom store, which had lots of Street Fighter and Monster Hunter and Resident Evil gear. The Pokemon Center, the Kirby Cafe, and the wildly awesome Square Enix Cafe Artnia, which had a room devoted to figures and statues, and it had a crystal hovering in the center of a fountain over a pool of materia. It was really, really cool. The real stars of the show for me, though, were definitely the Nintendo stores in both Tokyo and Kyoto. I admit, when I stepped into that Tokyo store, I was incredibly overwhelmed. Every inch of this large space was filled with the coolest stuff I'd ever seen. Clothing and figures and stationery and glassware. all plastered with Mario and Animal Crossing, Splatoon, Zelda, Pikmin. My brain just couldn't comprehend the sheer amount of items available or what I should get. So I actually ended up not buying very much from that first store. It was just too much for me. The Kyoto store, though, is much more wide open and was less crowded. So there I was able to process things better, and I ended up getting some cool stuff. I got a t-shirt, a really nice canvas bag, some glassware, and some of those rad new controller keychains you might have seen online that they have in gacha machines. Quick note on buying clothes, if you're going there, a 2X in Japan is not the same as a 2X in the US. So Charlie ended up with a cool new shirt. I could have bought a lot more, but the reality of, having to actually pack all of these things into luggage and get them back home kind of kept me in check. Another big gaming destination was Akihabara. This is Geek Central in Tokyo, and it's packed with arcades and shops selling manga, anime, toys, video games, models. We went to Animate to grab a bunch of Bungo Stray Dogs swag for Charlie, and I hit up a few game shops, including Super Potato, which is one of the more famous retro shops in Japan. This place was like, I think it was 5 stories of super tight aisles and overflowing shelves full of just old cool games and merchandise and just random stuff. My big score there was Famicom copies of Super Mario Bros. 3 and Link to the Past. Those are going to look really cool on a shelf. The last stop on the gaming agenda was a small, unassuming hotel that was about a 15-minute walk from our Kyoto hotel where we were staying. And you'd be excused for not thinking much of it as you walked past it, unless you saw the little plaque near the door that said the Nintendo Playing Card Company, because this building was the first proper headquarters for Nintendo that they built in 1933. As a kid who grew up loving Nintendo in the 80s, this was a special pilgrimage. I'm not the kind of guy who gets overly emotional, but this felt pretty amazing. I wasn't only there, though, to geek out over Nintendo. If I have one other passion in life besides gaming, it's food, and this was just as big of a draw for me as Kirby plushies. I tried to try as many things as I could, and it was almost all wonderful. I obviously had plenty of sushi and, soba and ramen, but I also tried A5 Wagyu beef for the first time, chicken hearts, pork tongue, turtle soup, and just so many other things. And if you've ever heard anyone talk about how great the 7-Eleven stores are in Japan, it's the truth. Every night we'd stop by the one in our neighborhood just, to grab a quick drink and a snack, like the infamous egg salad sandwiches, which are somehow just as great as I had heard they were. For a food lover, it was an unforgettable experience, whether I was eating at a little, tiny 8-seat stall in the alleys of Shinjuku, or a Michelin-starred restaurant along the river in Kyoto, or having one of the famous black eggs of Hakone, which are boiled in the sulfuric waters of this volcanic region, and they're said to add years to your life. It was just wild. It was crazy. The only thing I saw on a menu that I couldn't bring myself to try, I'm pretty brave with food, but the one thing I couldn't do was the pork rectum. I couldn't mentally get past that one. I'm sorry. Next time. As I adjust to being back home, though, it's not the food or the video games that I find myself missing the most. It's the amazing people and the unbelievable things that I did that showed me how incredible the world can be. It was the man who had us place our hands on a big block of ice and poured cold water over them on a sweltering hot day. He called that Japanese kindness. It was taking a boat up the Katsuraga, I think I said that right, up a river and buying snacks from a vendor who rowed his own boat up next to us. It was the old man sitting over the side of a bridge along the philosopher's path who sold us one of the sketches that he was working on. It was the temple with a mochi shop, which had been in business for over 1,000 years and was run by the 25th generation of the same family. The entire trip was full of moments like these that I will never, ever forget. Above all else, though, I'm going to remember the people. Every single person we met was so kind and generous and welcoming and eager to help us, whether it was the cashier or an Uber driver or a waiter. It was a reminder that people can be good. And in a time that is, let's be honest, full of a lot of anger and fighting, especially in the U.S., this was something I desperately needed to be reminded of. Oh, and the bidets. I'm going to miss the bidets. Those were amazing. So this week I started my new infusion treatment for my Crohn's disease and AS. And this involves getting an IV and spending a couple hours at the clinic while they pump drugs into my veins. I'm pretty hopeful that this will be an effective treatment and that it'll help me to end the year on a healthy note. And you know what? Besides the fact that, I'd probably rather not need to have this done, I kind of didn't mind it. I got to chill in a comfy chair. They offered me a blanket and a drink, and it gave me a chance for some peace and quiet and to catch up on some podcasts or Switch games. I mean, yeah, okay. Before we go, this week I'm sending positive vibes out to the Nintendo dads. I've known Justin, Jesse, and the guys for like a decade now. We started podcasting at roughly the same time, and we've been supportive of each other and even collaborated a few times over the years. And obviously Justin opens the show every single week, this show. They are truly great guys and have built up an awesome community of diehard Nintendo fans. And this week they are celebrating their 500th episode of Nintendo Dads. Think about that for a second. 500. That is a staggering amount of shows, and it is a testament to not only their dedication to producing a new show every single week, but also to their fans for supporting them for so long. Shows don't last that long if they aren't good, and if the people don't get behind them. So they're obviously doing something very right to have made it this far. So congrats to everybody over there at Nintendo Dads. You continue to be an inspiration to all indie podcasters. Thank you so much for listening to Midlife Side Quest. I appreciate you making time in your day to hang out with me. You can catch new episodes of the show every Thursday morning wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review while you're there. And if you'd like, you can follow me on Threads by searching for Midlife Side Quest. Until next time, be well and happy gaming.